They were the last of the great Ice Age giants, covered in thick brown fur, curved tusks sweeping forward like scythes, and eyes that reflected both power and intelligence. The woolly mammoth wasn't a monster from imagination. It was real, and for hundreds of thousands of years, it ruled the frozen north. The story of the mammoth begins around 400,000 years ago, when an ancient elephant called Mammoth trogontherii spread across the plains of Eurasia. Some of its descendants adapted to the brutal cold, shrinking in size, growing dense coats of hair, and evolving layers of insulating fat. These new arrivals were the woolly mammoths, scientifically known as Mammuthus primigenius. They were built for survival in a world where winter never truly ended. A fully grown male mammoth could weigh 6 tons and stand more than 10 feet. Its long tusks, sometimes reaching over 13 feet, weren't just for display. They were tools. Mammoths used them to dig through snow and ice, uncovering the dry grasses that sustained them. They could also wield them in combat, locking tusks with rivals during mating season. Their trunks were strong enough to lift hundreds of kilograms, yet delicate enough to pick a single flower. The Ice Age world they lived in was a place of extremes. During the Pleistocene, glaciers covered much of the northern hemisphere, temperatures swung wildly, and species had to adapt or disappear. The mammoth steppe stretched from Spain to Alaska, an unbroken sea of grass, sedges, and hardy shrubs. It was home to bison, musk oxen, cave lions, woolly rhinoceroses, and early humans. The mammoth wasn't the largest animal of this ecosystem, but it was one of the most influential. By constantly grazing and trampling, mammoths shaped entire landscapes. Their presence maintained the open tundra that so many other species relied on. Their thick fur coat had multiple layers. The long outer hairs trapped air, while the dense undercoat kept the animal's body heat from escaping. Beneath that, a thick layer of fat, sometimes 10 centimeters deep, insulated vital organs. Even their ears were small and rounded to reduce heat loss. Everything about the mammoth's body was an engineering response to ice and wind. But the woolly mammoth was not the only kind of mammoth. Over millions of years, the genus produced a long lineage of giants. Some lived in Africa and Europe long before the Ice Age began. Others adapted to different climates and terrains. The Columbian mammoth, for instance, roamed the warmer plains of North America. It was larger and less hairy than its northern cousin, a reminder that even in the prehistoric world, evolution shaped life to fit its environment. For much of prehistory, mammoths lived alongside early humans. Their bones and tusks appear in ancient campsites across Siberia and Europe. Humans carved tools and shelters from mammoth ivory. They painted them on cave walls, and they hunted them. A single mammoth could feed an entire community for weeks, providing meat, fat, and hides that could be turned into clothing or tents. But hunting a creature that size was dangerous. Spears had to be thrown with precision, and one mistake could mean death under a crashing wall of flesh. Archaeological evidence shows that humans developed advanced hunting techniques partly because of these massive animals. Cooperative strategies, fire, and traps all played roles. Over time, the relationship between humans and mammoths became one of dependence and destruction. We needed them to survive, but our success may have hastened their extinction. Around 15,000 years ago, as the last ice age began to fade, the mammoth's world started to change. Glaciers retreated, grasslands gave way to forests, and the animals that depended on cold climates began to lose ground. Food became scarce, and breeding grounds shrank. Climate change was the first blow. Humans delivered the second. Hunting intensified as human populations spread across Europe, Asia, and North America. In some regions, mammoths disappeared shortly after humans arrived. The timing is too consistent to ignore. At sites like Yana in Siberia and Mezhyrich in Ukraine, archaeologists have found structures made entirely of mammoth bones. Entire herds were killed for both sustenance and shelter materials. Whether it was overhunting, climate stress, or a combination of both, the effect was the same. The mammoth began to vanish from its once vast domain. By 10,000 years ago, most mammoth populations were gone, but not all. A small group survived, cut off from the mainland, on Wrangel Island off the coast of Siberia. These isolated mammoths, living on a patch of tundra smaller than modern-day Connecticut, persisted for thousands of years after their continental relatives had vanished. Genetic evidence shows that they survived until just 4,000 years ago, when the pyramids of Egypt were already standing. They were the last ghosts of a lost world. Their story on Wrangel Island was both miraculous and tragic, with limited resources and a small population. Inbreeding took its toll. DNA from their remains shows that genetic mutations began to accumulate. Some lost their sense of smell. Others may have developed strange coats or weakened immune systems. In the end, their isolation, once their protection, became their undoing. When we think of mammoths, it's easy to picture them as slow, lumbering creatures doomed by nature. But that's far from the truth. They were intelligent, social, and highly adaptable. They lived in matriarchal herds led by older females, much like modern elephants. Calves stayed close to their mothers for years, learning migration routes and survival skills. Their communication likely involved low-frequency rumbles that could travel long distances, helping herds stay connected across the vast tundra. In many ways, mammoths were the architects of the Ice Age environment. Their migrations kept the tundra fertile, dispersing seeds and recycling nutrients. Their dung supported insects and birds. Even after death, their carcasses fed predators and scavengers for months. The disappearance of mammoths may have transformed entire ecosystems. Some scientists believe their extinction even contributed to small climate shifts. Today, frozen mammoth remains are still emerging from the permafrost of Siberia, Alaska, and Canada. Perfectly preserved specimens with fur, organs, and even blood cells intact. These discoveries offer an extraordinary glimpse into the past and have inspired one of the most controversial scientific goals of our time: de-extinction using ancient DNA. Scientists are exploring the possibility of bringing back mammoth-like hybrids. By editing the genes of Asian elephants, their closest living relatives, researchers hope to recreate traits like thick fur and cold resistance. The idea isn't just about reviving a species for curiosity's sake, it's also about restoring lost ecosystems. Reintroducing cold-resistant elephants to Arctic regions could, in theory, slow permafrost melting by keeping tundra landscapes open and reflective. It's an ambitious plan, but it raises difficult questions. Would these new creatures truly be mammoths, or only imitations? And even if we could bring them back, should we? The fascination with mammoths endures because they represent something larger than extinction. They are a bridge between the age of beasts and the age of humans. Their story reminds us how fragile the balance of life can be, and how easily power can shift from nature to mankind. The mammoth survived shifting climates, predators, and ice ages, but it couldn't survive us. Every bone pulled from frozen ground tells the same story: an animal perfectly adapted to its world, undone by forces beyond its control. The wind still blows across the tundra where mammoths once walked, and sometimes in the deep silence of the Arctic, you can almost feel their presence. The ground itself remembers. In the end, the mammoth's legacy is not just about what it was, but what it meant. It was a symbol of endurance, intelligence, and the power of adaptation. It shaped landscapes, nurtured ecosystems, and became part of human culture and survival. Even in extinction, it continues to teach us what it means to live in balance with the world around us. Because once, not so long ago, the Earth belonged to the mammoth.